I was 6 years old when my dad first forced me to get naked in front of his camera. The poses that he commanded me to make were very unnatural for me as a 6-year-old, very uncomfortable. And I objected at every stage of the process. I broke down crying, begging, and pleading for him to not do this. Um, and he became very stern and told me to stop my crying and do what I was told. My mother was right there. And she said, Jim, please don't do this. And he said, shut up, Elaine. So that was the end of that. I wish I could say that the pedophilia was the worst part about being my dad's daughter, but it wasn't actually. Um, his need for absolute control, the fear that he instilled in us, the isolation that he enforced, that was the worst of it. And I was born into a religious cult that really supported that. It was called the Worldwide Church of God. It was founded by a man named Herbert W. Armstrong. Years later, we'd find out he was also a pedophile who was raping his adult daughter. Probably not a surprise. But it was a secret. There were so many secrets when I was growing up. We weren't allowed to talk about our home. We weren't even allowed to talk about the religious cult that we grew up in. And that attitude of secrecy, I would say it was a requirement for secrecy, really helped perpetuate these crimes, this abuse. And one of the things that I learned at an early age was that religion often supports the abuse of children. There's a lot of verses in the Bible about sacrificing one's child being a testament to one's faith in God. Um, how you can take all the virgins of the enemy's tribe for your wives, which is just a euphemism for another form of pedophilia. It's Old Testament, obviously. Not a lot of Christians ascribe to the Old Testament, but they used to. And I think what's really important to know is that our entire society is structured around a certain level of acceptance of child abuse, whether that's physical abuse of the child, spare the rod, spoil the child, it's an old saying, or sexual abuse of children. We kind of show that we have some tolerance for that when it occurs in the family because we don't call it child sexual assault, we call it molestation. I think that's hilarious and sad, really sad. Why would you have a different word just because the perpetrator was a parent? I don't get that. Um, but I do get that there's ways in which we continue to support parents' rights over their children's bodies. And I think most of this now is really subconscious. Like, I think most of us object to this. We're morally opposed to it. But we are not talking about the structures that actually enable this and perpetuate it. So it's true. You take somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, who's got a lot of money and a lot of power and probably the ability to blackmail a lot of powerful people. And that is a really blatant example of how the power structure of our society perpetuates pedophilia. And we're rightly outraged about that. But there's a way in which the power structure of families and churches and schools and society at large also perpetuate pedophilia. We're not looking at that. And I think one of the reasons we don't want to look at it is because none of us really wants to see our loved ones in prison. So it's just easier to deny what's going on. But the truth of the matter is, 25% of girls will be sexually assaulted before they reach the age of 18. That's true. That's a real figure. It's probably underreported, but at least 1/4 of all girls will be sexually assaulted before they turn 18. And 65% of that perpetrated by family and friends, not strangers, not billionaires on islands, family, at home, at church, in our schools. And the solution can't be that we just throw everybody who does this horrible, despicable, damaging crime in prison, because we're not going to be able to tolerate that. The children won't report it, for one, because there's very few children that want to see their daddy or their grandfather or their uncle in prison. Very few. And so we protect and we minimize and we keep the secrets and we deny. And I really think it's time we stop. And I think the way that we can do that is to find a way to heal families. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I don't think that shaming people and canceling people is the solution for our families. I'm not suggesting that people like Jeffrey Epstein and all his powerful friends don't deserve prison. I think they do. And there are some pedophiles who really need to be in prison because there's just no cure for what ails them. They're just going to continue to reperpetrate. But our families are a little bit different. And what really plagues our families is generational. My parents were sexually abused. Their parents were sexually abused. And there's a good chance the sexual abuse goes back generations. But I at least know it goes back to my grandparents. What is the solution? How do we stop this? Yeah, we can educate people. We can put them in therapy. We really have got to find some kind of a solution to this, because the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, while they're horrific and horrible people who really need to pay for their crimes, are not the biggest problem when it comes to pedophilia. The biggest problem is taking place in our homes with our own parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. And that's really sad. And I just want to say, I I love my family. I love my grandparents, my parents, my aunts, my uncles. They're all dead now, but I love them. And I forgive them. And this has to stop. So I know my family was probably uniquely afflicted with pedophilia, but it's a problem that is affecting a lot of families. And I want to start a conversation about what we do about pedophilia in our families. So please, if you have experience with this yourself that you want to share, or if you have some proposed solutions to how we heal our families so that this atrocity can stop, I'd love to hear it.